Hi, this is Kirk, the Bariatric Carnivore, and no, I'm not dead yet. And for those of you who didn't see my video from earlier this week, please take a look at it. I was in the Oklahoma Heart Hospital last week because of a blood clot in the lung. And this is what I really wanted to discuss with you a little bit more detail about, because it's kind of an important subject. If you know about it, it may save your life. So let's talk about it from a layman's perspective. What exactly happened? Why what causes a pulmonary edema or a blood clot in the lung? Why it creates a problem? How to prevent them? And what you may have to do about it. So, what a pulmonary edema or a blood clot in the lung, believe it or not, they don't start in the lungs for the most part. They start in the legs. And you may have seen things in the news media from time to time about, on long flights, how you need to move your legs, stand up every so often. Don't let your legs get stuck in a certain position where you're not crossing and uncrossing your legs or standing up and stuff like that. Because what will happen is the blood will pool in those areas. And when blood, if it gets stuck in the same place for a little while, it behaves almost like it would a cut. And it starts to clot, and those little clots start to break off, and if they get caught after they travel through your arteries into your lungs, you got a problem, because now you've got a blood clot stuck in your lungs, and that creates a whole host of problems. So what causes these blood clots in the legs? Well, the most common reasons is because sedentary activity, injuries, broken legs and stuff like that, can cause clots to form in the leg. Being stuck in a hospital bed where you're immobile or whatever, these things, and that's why they put on those orthopedic socks and stuff like that for those type of situations, because they're trying to keep the blood from pooling, particularly in the lower extremities and the calves and stuff like that, that's where a lot of the clots start to form. So you want to avoid that. Now, I don't think that happened in my case, but I will find out more about that next week when I meet with the cardiologist for follow-up. But for right now, that's most people. And frankly, how does that happen? Usually it's people that are overweight and type 2 diabetic, or people that are metabolically unhealthy. And, I've done a whole host of videos on how to avoid those type of situations. So we'll talk, I'm not going to talk so much about avoiding on metabolic health on this one, but let's just say, suffice it to say that being metabolically unhealthy makes it more likely that you're going to have this problem. And if you're sedentary and you're not moving and you're not standing on a regular basis, blood pools, particularly in the calves, they can break off in clots and get caught in your lung. Okay, so now you've got this blood clot in your lungs. Why is that kind of a problem? Well, your heart and your lungs work symbiotically, and I'm using layman terms. I'm not talking about from a medical perspective, but it's a pumping system, and it's a closed system, and it's almost like the old-fashioned pumps that you may have seen on a farm or something like that. And if there's a leak at any point in there or a blockage in the pump can't work effectively. And so what do you end up doing in order to get any water out of the pump? You have to pump it much faster, just hoping to get a little trickle of water to come out of the stupid thing, because it's not being efficient. A really good efficient pump, it's like one big push and that's how the heart and lungs normally work. But when there's that blockage in there because of the stupid blood clot, now you got a problem. And particularly with the right ventricle, the part that connects the heart to the lungs so you can oxygenate your blood, that becomes overworked. It is trying like crazy to suck oxygen and fluids and stuff like that into to help get the blood recirculated with oxygenated blood. That's kind of a complicated system, but suddenly it's not working really efficiently because it's being partially blocked thanks to this stupid blood clot. And as a result, it behaves like a regular pump where it starts to have to beat more, it has to beat faster, and it's getting less and less efficient, and fluid starts to build up because it's not being cleared out because the pump isn't working effectively. So it creates a horrible cascade of events where it's going faster, there's more fluid, which is creating more pressure, which is now creating less efficiency in the heart, and the pulse rate starts to skyrocket, and we got problems, Houston. I mean, serious problems. And frankly, a pulmonary edema kills about a third of the people that have them. So, and they can result in serious and sometimes permanent injury if they're not treated. And some of the symptoms of it, again, dramatically increased heart rate. And frankly, you feel like you're drowning because you kind of are. There's a lot of more fluid built up in the lungs because it's not being able to get cleared out, and the heart and the lungs are not working together, and it is trying like crazy to get oxygen to the rest of the body, and it's horribly inefficient at that moment. Everything's starting to go downhill. So that's kind of what you're feeling at that particular time, and it's painful. I mean, or at least, unfortunately, by the time I really noticed that it was a bad problem, I was in some pretty serious pain, real shortness of breath. I wasn't coughing up blood or anything like that yet, but that was going to be coming down the road. Things were not working well in the pulse rate. My resting pulse rate, by the time I got to the hospital, was over 150 beats a minute. To try to put that in perspective for you, when I sprint on my bike as hard as I possibly can for 15-20 seconds, I can't get my pulse rate over 132. I mean, working as hard as I possibly can, that's about my maximum heart rate. And I can't get it over that. But my resting heart rate during this whole thing was 150 beats a minute. So, it is putting some serious strain on the heart. Now, why is this kind of important? Well, one of the things I have found out, I did not realize it, but back in 2016 or so, some guy started doing some studies where he looked at, okay, what were the kind of the preferred nutrients for the heart? What does the heart run best on? And he found that distressed hearts actually prefer ketone bodies. And then there was an article in the journal Science about 2020 that looked at this in a little bit more detail, and they found out that the heart runs 20% more efficiently when it's running on ketones. Okay, that's interesting, but what is a ketone? Well, there's two sources of energy for the body. One of them is glucose, which is basically sugar from carbohydrates, and the other one is ketones, where your body's running on fat. Now, how do you get in? Something to keep in mind. If you're a healthy person who's, say, on average 165 pounds, type of person, and you've got your normal 5 liters of blood, a healthy person should have 1 teaspoon of glucose in their blood. Now, you store some extra glucose in your muscles for exercise and exertion and emergencies and stuff like that, but as far as your bloodstream is concerned, 1 teaspoon. That's what, in your body, if you've got 1 teaspoon in your body's not going to secrete any extra insulin. That's normal. That's the stasis. That's where you want to be. The problem is, if you drink a Coke, a 12-ounce Coke, that's got 10 teaspoons of sugar in it, which means you've now got more sugar than you need in your bloodstream, and the body, in order to compensate for that, starts to secrete insulin. And the insulin's job is to get, or one of its jobs, is to get glucose, that extra 10 grams of glucose that it really didn't need, out of your bloodstream and either into your muscles or into your fat cells. That's what your body is trying to do with all that, and you can take a little bit of, extra glucose for a while, and the body will jump into action to get it stored away. What insulin is exquisitely good at is storing that extra glucose into your fat cells. And that's one of the reasons why when you have an elevated glucose level, it's so darn difficult to lose weight, because you're going to have extra insulin in your body. You cannot burn fat while your insulin level is high, because the way the transporter works is it's putting energy into the fat cells when there's insulin. Until the insulin level goes down, it ain't coming out. So the insulin's cramming energy in there, and if you want to burn the fat, you got to reduce the amount of insulin. And the way you do that is by reducing the amount of carbohydrates that you need. Here's an interesting fact for you. What's the dietary need of carbohydrates in order to keep you happy and healthy? I mean, if you are going to eat a well-balanced diet, how many grams of carbs do you need in order to maintain health? And the answer is 0. There's no need for carbohydrate in your diet. Your body will make all the glucose it needs through a process called gluconeogenesis. You only need a teaspoon in your bloodstream. There are some parts of your body, particularly the kidneys and a couple of others, that need some glucose, but your body is very adept at doing that. Frankly, if you go 2 days without eating, you're going to go into ketosis. Your body is going to run on ketones. Why is that? Because you will deplete all the glucose in your body, and your body will be making just the amount of glucose it needs automatically, but it's not going to be coming from your diet at that point. So you don't need it. But this is, the problem with most of us is we get too much glucose, usually through the form of carbohydrates. Say for instance in the morning, you have a glass of apple juice or orange juice to start your day, which is pure carbohydrates or sugar. That's about, let's say for instance, another 10 grams of sugar. So now you've got 10 times more glucose in your bloodstream than you really need. Insulin goes into hyperdrive, and you've got a blood sugar spike. You feel kind of energetic with it, but all of a sudden it crashes. And you get hungry again because you're like, oh, I don't have any energy. I must have burned off that stuff. No, you just kind of had too much insulin and you're storing it. And most people keep their blood sugars continually high, because they're always adding in more glucose, trying to balance out that feeling. And that's a problem, because that will never allow for you to be able to burn the fat that's on your body, because you're constantly keeping your blood sugar levels constant. You're trying to. One nice thing that the federal government just did was they made continuous glucose monitors over the counter. You don't need a doctor's script for them anymore, and you'll soon be able to pick up one at the drugstore. And I highly recommend you try it out, maybe for just a 2-week experiment, just to see the blood sugar spikes that come from the different carbohydrates that you eat on a daily basis. I had one about 6 months ago, and it was the coolest experiment, because when I ate my normal diet, which is virtually 0 carbs, my constant blood glucose level is usually around 70 to 80 all the time, except when I exercised. And then the body would take extra glucose from the muscles and give me the extra energy I needed. When I exercised, it would jump up, but quickly get back down to that normal 70 range. I did that for a week, and then I went and tried, okay, let's see what would happen if you eat a donut. And it was amazing. My blood sugar would shoot up to 163 almost immediately, even higher sometimes, and then come crashing down to like a 57. It would set off the alarms on my phone, because it looked like I was going into some sort of some sort of sugar shock. But you won't know this, and you will not see how these different foods, foods that you think are healthy, like orange juice and stuff like that, how they affect your body until you actually try it. Now, there's some people that eat a ketogenic diet where they do have 20 to 40 grams of carbohydrate a day, usually in the form of real food, like vegetables and stuff like that. And what's interesting about those is, as opposed to an ultra-processed food, is they take time to break down. They're usually, the sugar and the carbohydrates are released at the lower end of the GI tract. And as a result, they do not get the big jumps in blood sugar that you would with an ultra-processed food or drinking a sugary drink. Sugary drinks will send your blood sugar right through the roof. You know, your results may vary, but test it out when you can get a chance to try a CGM. And I think you'll be amazed at just how much, you know, a 12-ounce Coke, and we're not talking about the super big gulp Cokes, we're talking about a 12-ounce Coke. Most people get 36 ounces, which is 30 teaspoons of sugar. And, you know, that's why we have this diabetes and obesity problem. Now, why does this make a difference with a pulmonary edema? If there was a drug that would increase your heart's efficiency by 20%, somebody would be a billionaire. I mean, think about the people that have obstructions in their heart. And if they could get 20% more efficiency, that could be a difference between life and death. Yet, all you have to do is change your diet. Switch it over, you know, from running on glucose to running on ketones, and you get that effect. And frankly, I think that's what may have saved my life and why I had virtually no ill effects of having a racing heart rate for so darn long. I can't prove this, but it makes sense that because my blood is pretty much, my body runs pretty much completely on ketones because I don't have any carbohydrates to speak of in my diet, I got a 20% increase in heart efficiency during a moment of crisis. And that may make all the difference in the world. Look, being healthy isn't going to protect you from bad things happening, but it makes it much easier for you to recover. And that's the important part. This is Kirk, the Bariatric Carnivore. I try to put out a couple messages each week. If you like this message, please hit the like and subscribe button. Join this tribe. Remember, in this fight for our health, man, we are all alone. But we can all be alone in this together and share the information that we see. I will try to put out a couple messages each week. I will talk to you again soon.